they took their eye off the prize. How can that happen? If it's so obvious that WAGs are a problem, how is it that we give them that kind of power? And the answer is literally, it's what your brain's programmed to do. Right? Think about it. If there's an idea that you care about, just whatever idea, you can think of an idea if you want to. What you naturally do is you go and find other people who share that idea. And you talk to them about it. Say, boy, isn't this a grand idea? You know, you read books, you read articles, you find people who say, yeah, this is how it is. Go on the web, find people, yeah, this is how it is. That's what we naturally do. An example of this, I'm an astrophysicist, and so, when people find out I'm an astrophysicist, one of the first 2 or 3 questions that they ask is, are there in fact space aliens? Okay. A lot of people out there firmly believe that there are space aliens and they abduct us and they take us off to their spaceships and they do all sorts of things. If you believe that space aliens take us away, what do? You go to your computer, you pull up a search engine, you type in true stories of alien abductions, and you get page after page after page of sites that will tell you all about space alien abductions, how they do it, about the government cover-ups that try to hide it. It's all there. And so you say, see, I knew it all the time. There are space alien abductions. It's what we do naturally. In fact, psychologists have a fancy term for this. They call it confirmation bias. When you have an idea, you look for people who agree with you. It's the way your brain's wired. I was on a plane a while back, and I was talking to a woman, and I forget how it is that the conversation got started. But she announced out of the blue, I'm a psychic. And I said, okay, that's interesting. Tell me, why do you think you're a psychic? And she said, well, the other day I was thinking about my brother, and my brother called. I'm a psychic. I said, okay. Tell me, do you ever think about your brother when he doesn't call? Oh, yeah, all the time. He and I are close. We grew up together. It's wonderful. I said, okay, fine. Does your brother ever call when you weren't thinking about him? Oh, yeah, all the time. It always just makes my day when I get a call out of the blue from my brother. I said, tell me again why it is that you think you're a psychic. Well, the other day I was thinking about my brother and he called. I'm a psychic. Now, at that point, I just kind of let the conversation lapse, because where do you go from there? There was absolutely nothing that I was going to say that was going to disavow her of the notion that she was a psychic. She was making a very fundamental and frankly a very common mistake. She imagined that the fact that she thought she was a psychic made it so. She forgot that there are questions about which our opinions simply do not matter. How many of you know what a WAG is? Anybody? That they'll say it out loud, your dog's tail? A WAG is a wild-ass guess, is what a WAG is. Quite often, the things that we think that we know, we really can't claim to know at all. Really, they're just WAGs. And WAGs come in lots of different flavors. A lot of business leaders in the room, a lot of you own your own business. Lots of studies are done of businesses that succeed. And I was reading kind of an interesting study the other day that was done of businesses that fail. This study reached a very interesting conclusion. 81% of the loss of shareholder value can be traced to a single cause: mismanagement of strategic risk. Now, I'm an astrophysicist, so I had to scratch my head for a minute and figure out what they really meant by mismanagement of strategic risk. But I finally realized what it means. And what it means is they did not realize that the light at the end of the tunnel was, in fact, the headlight of the oncoming train. That's what mismanagement of strategic risk is. In other words, mismanagement of strategic risk means that they made the mistake of believing their own WAGs. The road to hell may be paved with good intentions. The road to failure is paved with WAGs. Is there anybody in the room who is a parent who has not at some point or other had the experience of having their kids go off and do something stupid because their friends did it? And you ask the question, okay, if your friends jumped off a bridge, would you do it too? Yeah. The answer is yes, they would. Because we're lemmings. We are the go-along to get-along species. And there's a reason for that. It's bred into you. Think about it. You are at the end of a long line of ancestors who would do anything, say anything, believe anything if that meant they got to stay a part of their group. Because if they got kicked out of their group, no food, no social group, certainly no chance to reproduce. If they didn't do anything, say anything, believe anything to remain a part of their group, guess what? You wouldn't be here. It is bred into you to buy into WAGs, groupthink. So what do we have to do? Is it going to be easy to fix this? No. The only way that you're going to get past this is if you take that standard of knowledge, that knowing means that you have challenged something, trying to show that it's wrong, but have so far failed, and turn that into a habit of mind. You have to reach the point where you cannot even look at an idea without immediately asking yourself, how might I know it if this idea is wrong? And if you just look at every idea like that, get into that habit, then you'll see the WAGs that would take you down. A leader's job is to be the person who can see far enough down the road to make the decisions today that will put your business where you want it to be next year, or the year after, or the year after that. The quality of that leadership, can you make those decisions well if your knowledge is wrong? No, you can't do it. The quality of your leadership depends directly on the quality of your knowledge. Here's the bad news. If your business fails, there is an 80% chance that the reason it failed is because you did not see something that you should have seen coming. It's kind of bad news. Here's the good news. I just told you how not to make that mistake. Innovation. You hear a lot about innovation. I'm an astrophysicist. I know from innovation. You know, my whole career, frankly, has been about the life cycle of ideas. You know, the old joke, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. I have a t-shirt that I sometimes wear if I'm teaching a college class that says, actually, I am a rocket scientist. Innovation. The first thing that you need to do if you're going to innovate is you've got to find the killer opportunity. You have to find the opportunity, the thing out there that, boy, if I can invent the better mousetrap, if I can solve that problem, then the world will be the path to my door. Question is, where does that opportunity come from? I just told you. You've worked it out. You've convinced yourself that it'll work. You're going to be the hero. You were vested in this idea. And then you go into a room and you present it. And what does everybody in the room immediately start doing? Tearing it down. Do you suppose that that is a comfortable place to be? No, I can tell you from experience, that is not a comfortable place to be. If you're testing WAGs, you know, that people talk about a team working together. From my perspective, the value of teamwork is less in the unity of the people on the team than it is in the diversity of the people on the team. Because if you've got a team, everybody on the team brings with them a difference in background, a difference in expertise, a difference in experience, a difference in perspective. So if you're trying to attack a WAG, the thing that a team gets you, is lots of vantage points from which to see the idea's problems. That's what a team's for. And this is a challenge I'm going to give you. You know, I gave you the practical, this is the takeaway message. Now I'm university professor, I have to assign homework. Here's your homework. Leave here, and when you've got a little time and it's quiet and you can think to yourself, what are the fundamental assumptions? What are the fundamental ideas that underlie my business plan? And after you have those, think about how you know those things. And I would bet you a good bottle of scotch that you'll find that several of the items on that list fall into the category of I just know it, it's groupthink, somebody told me it's true, I want it to be true. This worked last year, I guess it'll still work this year. Next thing you do is you start looking for reasons to doubt those ideas. Start actively trying to show that they're wrong. If you do this, I will bet you that several people in this room will have a different business plan in a year than they have today. Pure and simple. I've done a bad thing to you guys. I've done a horrible thing to you guys because I just told you how it works. I just told you that if you run into failure, there's a pretty good likelihood it's because you didn't see something that you should have seen. And not only that, I told you what you ought to be doing so that you won't miss it. I even told you that if you do that, it'll open the door to new opportunities. So, you know, quote from Spiderman, Uncle Ben to Peter Parker, with great power comes great responsibility. Sorry, guys, I just laid that cloak of power on you and you've got to live with it. Something goes wrong from here, then don't look at me. You know, you can't plead ignorance. I remember the first time that I looked through a telescope. It was a little dime store telescope in a friend's backyard. Looking at Saturn and its rings, I can still see it in my mind's eye like it was yesterday. In that moment, I fell in love with astronomy. But it's a long path from looking at Saturn in a little backyard telescope to finding yourself at a ceremony where they're unveiling a series of stamps with your work on it. You don't get from one place to the other by settling for wishful thinking, by settling for complacency, by buying into groupthink, by settling for snake oil. The way that you get from one place to another is by refusing to settle for less. I am happy that in my life I didn't, and there is absolutely no reason that you should either. This is a thing that people tend to get wrong. These scientists always trying to prove things. That's not the way that it works. Everybody in here has heard of the Big Bang, right? Do you know where the Big Bang got its name?
Television show?
No, not, Yeah, I love the Big Bang Theory. The Big Bang Theory is sort of centered around the California Institute of Technology, where I spent a bunch of years. And I don't know how other people find the Big Bang amusing because, frankly, all of the best jokes on the Big Bang are insider jokes. There's a scene on the Big Bang where Sheldon is standing there. It's a paintball fight. And he stands up and says, "Geology is not a real science," and he gets plastered with paintballs. That is the funniest single moment in the entire show. But anyway, the Big Bang, the idea of the Big Bang started when a guy by the name of Edwin Hubble, in fact the namesake of the telescope, discovered that the farther away from us a galaxy is, the faster away from us it's moving. And if you think about that for a minute, you say, gee, that says that the universe is expanding. If you go forward in time, it's getting bigger. If you go backward in time, it says that things get smaller and smaller. A guy by the name of Fred Hoyle looked at that idea and he said, that's the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. That is just nonsense. You idiots think that the whole universe began in a Big Bang or something. And the name stuck. The Big Bang actually started out as a pejorative term for the idea that the universe had that origin. And now I can stand up here today and say it is a fact that the universe began in a Big Bang. The reason I can say that is that for roughly the last 90 years, thousands of very, very smart people have done everything that they can think of to show that that idea is wrong and have failed. Another aspect of this is courage, because this process never ends. You should always be challenged, which means that you never reach the point that you say, I'm 100% certain. Because guess what? If I say, I'm 100% certain, what I just said is that nothing could ever make me change my mind. I'm 100% certain. If nothing could ever make you change your mind, is there anything that could cause you to discover that you're wrong? If nothing could ever cause you to discover that you're wrong, is there any way you can actually claim to be right? It never ends. The hard reality is that logically, like 1 + 1 = 2 logically, we can never have absolute certainty. That as soon as you say, I am certain, what you've said is that all I can ever have is a wag. Knowledge and certainty are the opposite of each other. What that means is that when you act, it requires courage. Courage to act understanding that there's uncertainty. Courage to act even as you continue to look for flaws in what it is that you're thinking. I never promised that I was going to come in here and make it easy for you. But that's the reality. If you think about it, though, now at least you know that you're acting in the face of uncertainty. Because it's a darn sight better to know that you're acting in the face of uncertainty than it is to be unknowingly acting in the name of delusion. And those are your options. Well, let me ask you a question. Do you accept that it is a fact that Earth revolves around the sun?
I do.
Okay. A few hundred years ago, had you said that, they may well have burned you at the stake for having done so. That's what happened to Giordano Bruno, for example. Really, what the statement that Earth revolves around the sun is a theory that is very, very well tested. I could spend 3 days telling you all of the different ways you can test the theory that Earth revolves around the sun, all of the ways that you could have discovered that it's wrong. And eventually what happens, another one, force equals mass times acceleration. If I hold up a pin and drop it, it'll fall to the ground. All of these things we take as facts. Again, really what they are ideas that have survived this kind of regimen of test. Something might start out as a wag, evolve to become hypothesis, be tested, until you start to say, yeah, maybe that's something I can hang on to. Eventually, some of these things get to the point of just saying, yeah, it's a fact. But you never go beyond the ability to go out there and test it again just one more time.
In perhaps the most famous astronomical image ever made, the Hubble Space Telescope portrait of the Eagle Nebula.
On a college campus near Phoenix, Arizona, students wear T-shirts and hats that picture the nebula and the phrase, "A star is born." Jeff Hester, Arizona State University.
It does feel like this image is everywhere because this image is everywhere. It's not everybody who gets to see something that they've done show up on a postage stamp or happen to see something that you've done on a T-shirt with somebody just walking across campus. My wife will see this picture in some context, and she'll poke me and say, "Now, explain to me again why we don't get any royalties off that picture."
The nebula image has 3 orange finger-like pillars.
That picture of the Eagle Nebula has been dubbed the Pillars of Creation. It's become a modern icon.
A computer screen depicts a shadowy image behind an array of stars. As Hester types, the 3 pillars appear first in grayscale, then cloaked in vivid blue and orange.
When the Hubble first transmitted it back to Earth, scientists themselves were stunned at what they saw.
We were not prepared for what we saw when we finally got the images of the Eagle Nebula put together. We weren't prepared for the beauty of what we had assembled. We weren't really prepared for the science of what emerged from it. Every now and then you get lucky.
What the image revealed were places in our own Milky Way galaxy where new stars are actually forming.
You see these little nodules sitting around here. Each one of those is large enough to swallow our solar system several times over. Embedded in at least some of those, we can see that there are young stars, stars that will become stars like our sun, around which are going to form solar systems perhaps like our own. Is it possible that 4.5 billion years from now, some civilization on a planet orbiting that star will look up at the sky and wonder about where they came from? I'm not going to say it's likely, but it is certainly possible.